Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, our guest today is former Chief Justice Sue Bell Cobb. Also, the V-Team takes a look at the ruling and the dismissal in the Lowell Barron case. And there's blowback against Kevin Turner, against the AG, against a lot of folks that are trying to protect Mike Hubbard, we hear. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to have you back, Charlana.
Thank you. Don't know for how long. I got a trial that starts in a week and a half.
I know you've got an exciting trial. I wish we could talk about it, but we can't.
Oh, y'all can come watch. It'll be fun.
This is the last weekend before fall, too, remember? Labor Day. Tomorrow.
The Accountability Act has not been very popular with a lot of folks in Alabama. A similar act was passed in North Carolina this past year, and this last week, a Superior Court judge in North Carolina declared it unconstitutional. Barron, have you looked at that?
I have, and the North Carolina program is the one that popped up when it initially passed. We were there the night that the Accountability Act passed. It was a lot of chaos. And immediately grabbed a copy of it, hit Google, and tried to figure out where did they steal this language? Who did they model this after? The North Carolina bill was the one that most closely resembled the Alabama bill. So it seemed like they stole a lot of the language from the North Carolina bill. The Alabama Act has also been declared unconstitutional by a trial court judge. And it'll be interesting to see on appeal how that's handled. There were 4 or 5 different grounds that Judge Eugene Reese in Montgomery declared the Alabama Act unconstitutional. Slightly different grounds in North Carolina, but it'll be interesting to see how they both play out on appeal.
Charlana, as a trial attorney, how do you think this thing's going to work out?
It's going to go to appeal. It should be noted that the Superior Court in North Carolina is the equivalent of our trial court. So this is just one trial court judge who back in February entered an injunction which put the school voucher program on hold, and their North Carolina Supreme Court actually allowed the voucher program to go forward. And so until the trial, and that's what happened this last week. And what the trial judge said, I think, is important for the folks looking at it in Alabama. He said appropriating taxpayer funds to unaccountable schools does not accomplish a public purpose. And one of the criticisms with the Alabama program is that most of the participating schools are religious schools, church-affiliated schools in Alabama.
This has really been a problem in our state, hasn't it, Claire? I mean, it's caused a lot of consternation.
It has. In this particular last couple legislative sessions, it's been a real problem. And, you know, the former governor's behind it and all involved in it. But with this happening in North Carolina, this probably sets precedence given the ruling that Judge Reese had. So if I were the folks behind this, I think I'd be a little bit nervous about our Accountability Act here in Alabama.
Well, you know, I think it's fallen out of favor with most everybody now that we've had a chance to look at it. You know, it's sort of like the Obamacare thing. Well, we'll know what it is once we pass it.
There are 2 major things that I think most people are having a problem with. One is the money to fund these scholarships is coming from every classroom in the state of Alabama. Even people who have school districts that have no failing schools. They're losing money proportionately to the Accountability Act. The second thing is you have a private board, a scholarship board run by private individuals that is now tasked with doling out the winners and losers of public money. I think that strikes people as very unfair, very undemocratic, and very, frankly, not the way that we like public money being handled.
Well, and not only that, you have private individuals making money off of these public funds as well. I mean, because there is the taxpayer side of it, or the tax credit side of it, where it's generating a fairly decent amount of revenue for individuals.
Well, again, I think it's not going to stand if the court gets it. It's so unpopular, and there's been pointed out several things that are wrong with it. One big event that happened in court this past week was that the Attorney General's office withdrew its case or dismissed its case against former Senator Lowell Barron. Claire, that was a little shocking.
Well, it really was not a surprise to me. I mean, honestly, given what's gone on in the last, almost 4 years since Senator Lowell Barron's been gone, and some of the same things they've accused him of. We've seen a lot of improprieties of that going on in the state of Alabama, and they've even pointed fingers. I mean, the Barron's attorney, Joe Espy, I believe, pointed out situations in the current Attorney General's office. They couldn't take that heat. I mean, it just made sense. They had to drop it. There was no way they were going to win it.
This was about whether supposedly romantic relationship between Jill Johnson and Barron could be entered into court records.
No,
right?
that was only one of the issues on appeal, and that was the issue that got the most interest by the public and by the media.
Well, sensational.
Because it's more sensational. The real issue, and I think the critical issue, was whether or not Lowell Barron's attorneys were going to be able to introduce evidence that these types of bonuses had been paid out by other entities and other candidates, like the Attorney General, like the ALGOP PAC. The Republican Party paid win bonuses. And so that was really going to be, I think, the make or break issue. But because the Attorney General's office certified these two issues on appeal as being fatal to their case if they weren't decided on appeal, the Attorney General had no choice but to withdraw the charges.
Yeah, I think that would have been a real blow to that office and unfortunately to the Alabama GOP. They didn't want that laundry coming out.
Another thing that we're waiting for the Supreme Court to decide is the Barrymore Appeal to the Supreme Court. We've got about 2 minutes. This kind of, some people are drawing a parallel here, aren't they, Barron?
They are. The Barrymore case, the question here, the major question, the overriding question is whether or not the Attorney General has the legal authority to appoint a supernumerary district attorney, a retired district attorney who served long enough to get supernumerary status, to impanel a grand jury and issue indictments. That's kind of the overriding question here. I think the legal experts I've talked to suggest that in order to do this at the writ stage, right now, before trial, it would basically have to rewrite Alabama law. You would have to completely, from top to bottom, rewrite Alabama law over what does the Attorney General have authority to do, and when do you have the right to bring up this issue?
This is odd, though, isn't it, to put this up to the Supreme Court like this?
Well, it's odd because it normally would have gone to the Court of Criminal Appeals first because it's a criminal issue, but the Supreme Court has taken the appeal because it is such a big issue, and they know that it's going to wind up there no matter what. And it's interesting because if the court were to decide in favor of Barrymore, then I think the court would be compelled to go back and look at other cases that have been handled in this same way. Because this is not the first time that a sitting attorney general has recused from a prosecution.
Roy Johnson case, for instance.
Well, exactly. Having worked in the Attorney General's office for two sessions and prior both, this is not uncommon. This is a normal pattern where if they cannot handle it, they recuse themselves. They appoint someone to do that. Just as if a DA has to recuse himself, then it comes to the Attorney General's office and they appoint someone.
Well, hopefully we'll know about this sooner than later.
Well, they've said they intend to expedite it as well.
Well, we're going to have to hold it right there. You're watching The Voice of Alabama Politics. Our upcoming guest is former Chief Justice Sue Bell Cobb. We'll be right back.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
Coming up, I'm going to take the Ice Bucket Challenge. Find out who I'm going to challenge up next on The V.
Welcome to Alabama's newest entertainment destination, Wind Creek, Wetumpka. The perfect escape for date night, a getaway with your friends, or a relaxing poolside cocktail. Whether it's a day trip to enjoy the best steak in Alabama or a romantic weekend, the finest Southern hospitality is just a short drive away. Wind Creek, Wetumpka. Find your winning moment.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Our guest today is former Alabama Supreme Court Chief Justice Sue Bell Cobb. Chief Justice, thank you for joining us.
Bill, I'm honored to be here.
You have had a storied career as a justice, as a judge, as an advocate. You are still working hard, aren't you?
I am. I care about Alabama, and my life has been about public service, and whether you're paid for it or not, I just believe that to have a better state, all of us have got to work together to improve the state of Alabama.
One of the things that you're working on now, pro bono, is the idea that Alabama knows how to be tough on crime, but can we learn to be smart on crime? Tell us about what you're working on.
As Chief Justice, I sponsored and established the Alabama Public Safety and Sentencing Coalition. We had half Republicans, half Democrats on it, and we presented a legislative effort to the legislature in 2010, and they considered it in 2011. And as a result, the whole matter was premised on the fact that Alabama has the most overcrowded prison system in the United States of America. We're almost 200% of capacity, which means we have twice the number of people that the prisons were designed for. And we're also the least funded. You could double what we pay per inmate per day, and it would not reach the national average. Because of that, what it really means is that we're not making our citizens safer. We're wasting tax dollars by the way we sentence, and it's a faith issue as well.
A lot of people have an attitude, especially in our state, because we're very conservative, that we need to lock people up and throw away the key. Some people will even have us chain them to their bunks. But this is not a solution to our funding problem or our criminal problem or even our crime problem, is it?
We've got to be smarter, just like you said, on crime. What we found is that the evidence shows that swift and more appropriate sentences for offenders make a better difference in them not reoffending. And that's what our sentencing scheme does not do. Other states that have already tackled the tough issues of sentencing reform, they've seen their crime rate go down.
Is sentencing reform the key here, or is it reform once we put them in prison?
Well, it's really both. We've got to have more funding in our prisons. Alabama has the lowest number of correctional officers, which other people would call prison guards, but correctional officers in the nation. So that means that our prisons are very unsafe places. So we have a lot of nonviolent offenders that really need drug and alcohol treatment, need mental health problems dealt with. They're nonviolent, they haven't hurt anybody, but when they come out of prison, having been locked up with much more hardened, dangerous criminals, they come out much more likely to reoffend and to hurt people.
Well, when we send nonviolent offenders into our state prisons, we're sort of giving them an entree or even a PhD into crime, how to commit it and how to get away with it.
Absolutely. And what we have is we have a situation where you take nonviolent offenders, and because of our broad range of sentencing, the fact there's so much discretion, you will have people in prison that committed a much worse offense receive a much lighter sentence than someone that stole a bicycle. So it should be fair. I mean, I think Alabamians want sentencing to be fair, and we want it to be smart. And smart would be a huge expansion of community corrections. Community corrections, having a viable community corrections program in every single county would mean jobs for your local community, and it would mean that the offender is in a work release program, is working, is being drug tested, they're paying victims, they're paying the state back fines and costs, and they're actually working and dealing with the issues that are actually plague them, that cause them to commit crime in the first place.
When you say this is an issue of our faith, tell me what you mean by that.
Well, the Old Testament and the New, it's what we do for the poor. I mean, the emphasis is what we do for the poor. Also, whether it's the Old Testament or the New or any other faith, the emphasis is justice. Justice. Do justice. Walk humbly with your Lord and do justice. And I'm here to tell you, having been Chief Justice, having been a trial judge, having been 12 years on the Court of Criminal Appeals, where I kept thousands of people behind bars, that what we're doing is a system that, because it's so underfunded, that oftentimes the poor get a different result than people of means. And that should, for people of faith, that should be an issue of concern.
You were and are the only female Chief Justice in Alabama. And I know from personal experience that you are very concerned about the poor, women, children. Those are issues that are big with you. How can our state do a better job looking after women who are victims of domestic violence and children that are left poor and unparented by the prison system?
Let me answer that in two ways. One, we need dedicated domestic violence dockets in every single court proceeding involving domestic violence cases. We need trained prosecutors and trained judges, and we need appropriate consequences and sanctions, and harsh sanctions for domestic violence perpetrators. So that's something that must be done, and I advocated that as Chief Justice, and it would take more funds, but it would be an appropriate use of funds, because domestic violence is a driver of a lot of violent crime and criminal activity. But on the second, as far as helping children and the needy, Children First Foundation, of which I was one of many who helped establish it, provides the only full-time lobbyist. Christy Mahaffey, you may know Christy.
Right, do know, she's wonderful.
She's wonderful, and she is the only full-time advocate for children and for children issues at the legislature. People need to go on AlabamaChildrenFirst.com and join up with Children First and really help be involved on these children's issues, and the other issues involving the poor.
We've got about 1 minute left. You have a specific charitable effort that you're trying to get some help with. Could you tell us about that?
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for bringing it up. I know that so many of your listeners and people of Alabama are people of faith. Right now, Draper Prison is almost has two times the number of inmates that it was designed for. And many of them are low nonviolent offenders. The chapel at Draper Prison only holds 125. Right now, they have about 1250, 1275 inmates.
Wow.
And have a chapel that only serves 125. We're working with the chaplain in order to try to secure the funds so that the inmates can build their own worship center. And if we do that, we'd be able to do more drug rehab, we'd be able to do more prison ministry. You'd have a small room for the smaller faiths that have to be served by law. You'd have another larger classroom that would help with more prison ministry issues, and then you'd have a worship area of 250 where we could do much better job of calling on that higher power. I mean, it is truly by faith. But for the grace of God, any of us could be in that situation. But yet we at the same time need to provide inmates a means by which to improve their situation so they don't reoffend. Because Bill, 95% of inmates, 95% will ultimately get out of prison. We need to be about the business of actually trying to correct that behavior, punish it appropriately, give a sentence that fits the crime so that when they get out, that they're less likely to reoffend.
Well, I want to thank you for your service, and thank you for coming on our show today and informing us on this problem.
Thank you.
Our guest today has been Chief Justice Sue Bell Cobb. You're watching The V. We'll be right back.
The V is sponsored by MediaWorks Communications Video Production Services for all your video production needs.
I teach. I touch the future. I am AEA.
I keep the school clean every day for your children. I am AEA.
Congratulations on your scholarship. I help children make choices for college and careers. I am AEA.
We are AEA.
Welcome back to The Voice of Alabama Politics. This week, we had a story in ALReporter.com that showed where at least $16 million has been spent by about 4 state agencies to promote silly things. The DOT spent $130,000 of taxpayer funds to promote a website and a brochure that's telling people about how they're going to tear down a bridge in Birmingham. I mean, that is what, Claire?
Egregious.
Absolutely.
Tear the bridge down and tell people to detour.
Put out some orange
Why do
road
you have to spend
signs.
$130,000?
This is This is really crazy, given the state of affairs financially at the general fund. I wonder if the legislators know that these state agencies have spent $16 million, and I wonder if the governor's office
was it
even
spent
knows
with?
this.
Do we know?
It was spent with a Birmingham-based PR company called Big Communications. One of the big users of that is the Department of Commerce. And interestingly enough, when I called the Department of Commerce last week to try to get some public documents, after a month, they finally told me that I needed to contact Big Communications, and they would vet the process to see whether I was allowed.
They're talking about they would vet a process for the spending of public funds?
No, they would vet the process of allowing me as a reporter to see the records.
You should be able to get them straight directly from the Department of Commerce or
They
Transportation.
don't do that. You got to go through their PR firm.
Well, it strikes me as a huge conflict of interest because public relations firms are in the business of making you look good.
Yeah.
Sometimes documents being turned over make you look bad. And if you have to go to a public relations firm to get something that's going to make you look bad, your likelihood of getting it shrinks.
Well, they have been stalling on this all along, but it made me look into how much money. They're spending about $300,000 this year. This company, Big Communication, got $7 million last year from the state for PR, public relations.
I mean, that's just
Another thing that y'all pointed out this week, and we covered it as well, that Minda Riley Campbell got her a nice paycheck. You want to tell us about that paycheck?
Well, we don't know what her paycheck was. We know that a client of hers, as she's a lobbyist, this is the daughter of the former governor, Bob Riley. Minda Riley Campbell is his daughter. She's a lobbyist for a law firm, Baker Donaldson, out of Nashville, and she secured them a $72,000 payday in order to calculate something that's readily available on Google that any of us could find in 2 minutes, which is, what is the median income in the state of Alabama? I challenged myself to this. It took 90 seconds to find 3 different figures that could be used. They were all within about $100 of each other. So you err on the side of caution, you give them the highest number, and you save yourself $72,000.
But didn't Minda Riley go to the folks over there at finance and say, hey, you got a problem using my client's law firm, Baker Donaldson?
Yeah, that's basically what Alice Ann Byrne, the head of personnel, that was her.
I mean,
that was
how
her
does
story.
that work, Jack?
I don't know how it works. You know, I don't know. There's no rhyme or reason for Minda Riley Campbell, in my opinion.
Is this a case of just using back scratching because she's the governor's daughter?
You know, I don't know if it's that, but the bigger question is, why in the world did they hire anybody to do this? I mean, that's the question.
I know. Why would you hire a company to tell you what you can get off the dadgum
You
internet?
can hire a lawyer for an entire year for $72,000 to work in the Department of Personnel, and after he does his 2-minute Google search, you got him for the next 364 and a half days.
Well, also, it brings up one point that I'm thinking about. You know, when the legislators passed themselves this big increase, and it was voted on by the taxpayers, everybody, it was on a referendum, they tied their increase in salary to the median income.
Right.
For the people of Alabama. So I wonder if this had something to do with that.
No, that's exactly what it is. That's what they were asked to do.
But it's just crazy that we're paying $72,000 for somebody to get something that a Google search will give you.
Absolutely.
The United States government already pays for it. Taxpayer money wasted.
Yeah.
We reported a story a couple of weeks ago now that there was a plot, we were told, inside the Attorney General's office to stop Matt Hart from prosecuting the Lee County grand jury. There has been a lot of blowback on that. Jack, what have you been hearing?
Well, I've been hearing that people think that somebody that is the Deputy Attorney General to be making phone calls to people under a grand jury investigation ought to be fired, period.
But he was
and
not
maybe
fired.
even lose his law license.
You've talked a lot about this, Barron. You're on that law license thing, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, and I'm still on the law license thing. It's astonishing. I mean, it's something that takes your breath away when you think that a single bureaucrat, a young bureaucrat, that frankly isn't.
Excuse me. He's a political appointee. He serves at the leisure of the Attorney General.
And he should be fired, frankly.
I had several calls from top Republican leaders who told me this was the most disturbing story they had read in years because justice was on the line. Would you agree with that, Claire?
Well, I would, and you know, I'm back with them. He is really treading water of losing his license to be disbarred. But interestingly enough, you know, I had somebody pick up the phone and call me. The Attorney General, I understand, had a fundraiser in Montgomery this past week, and at the fundraiser, the little Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Turner, was there, and he told somebody, well, I'm the dictator of the office.
Really?
That's what he told some
that's
donors at this fundraiser.
We
is what I
know
understand.
what's happened to a couple of dictators over history.
Yeah.
The whole mentality, the mood there goes back to the days of Jimmy Evans, and that is very sad.
It is sad.
Very sad, because it's a great place to work, and it's unfortunate.
Well, Jonathan Barbee has something special that he's got going on today. So, Jonathan, take it away.
Thanks, Bill. I'm Jonathan Barbee. I'm here with my friend Jason Anderson, and today I'm going to take the Ice Bucket Challenge. Jason challenged me over 3 months ago, but I hate cold water, so I've avoided it. I'm like my dad. I do not like cold water, and I've avoided it, but now I've been challenged by so many people. I'm coming back to the OG, the original person that challenged me, Jason. Jason, why did you challenge me?
Well, you know, Jonathan, I've known you for quite a few years, and I know you can tend to be a little hot-headed. So I thought this would be good for you.
Well, see this little bucket we got right here? It's not very big. Jason's going to toss this on me. I figured, you know what? I can handle this. It's not that bad. We'll do it. Let's get ready and do this.
All right.
Jason. Tell you a little bit about the Ice Bucket Challenge. It started many months ago, 8 or 9 months ago, but it originally started with the Fallen Firefighters Fund, and then it turned into the own charity you wanted to donate to. Since then, ALS has picked up the Ice Bucket Challenge, and they've raised over $3.5 million this far. And recently, as of last week, they filed trademark paperwork to trademark the phrase Ice Bucket Challenge. Today, I'm taking the challenge, and I'm going to donate $25 to ALS, $25 to United Cerebral Palsy of Greater Birmingham, and $25 to the Autism Society of America. So today, I'm taking the challenge, and I am challenging today my wife, Joanne, and I'm challenging the entire V team sitting on the set right there, and I hear you laughing. And I'm also going to challenge Alabama Governor Robert Bentley. So I've got my GoPro here. We're ready to do this. It's a small bucket. Jason, are you ready?
I'm ready.
The GoPro's rolling. We can see what this is like. Here we go. We're about to do this. And let's do this. Woo! Oh, I can take that. You see, that wasn't that big of a deal. We can do it. You can do this back in the studio. See that? This is great. That wasn't that bad.
That's gotta hurt.
He's goofier than I thought he was.
Jonathan, are you okay?
I got a brain freeze, man. Oh! Back to you in the studio.
Well, my answer to that is I'm writing a check.
Yeah, I am too, so I don't have to see it again.
Well, I guess I will say my 2 children have done the challenge, and I'm going to do it too.
I'm going to make my check out to the John Paul II Medical Research Institute in Iowa City. They do ethical research that does not use embryonic or fetal stem cell research to help cure ALS.
Well, we're going to leave it right there. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You can catch us every day at AOReporter.com and every Sunday on your ABC affiliate throughout the state. Thanks for watching, and happy Sunday.
I want to say I felt bad doing that, but in good conscience, I can't lie.